Most apologies aren't for you. They're actually damage control. If you ever watch a celebrity apologize sometimes, like really watch it, not just skim over the headlines, right? Because most of the time, it's not actually an apology to the person that got hurt. Sometimes it's a performance aimed at a general public, trying to convince a crowd of people, all these strangers, that this person out there is still one of the good ones. The actual person that they might have wronged barely factors into it. There's a lot of nuance on that though, because a lot of these days, when there's celebrity apologies, not that they've specifically wrong, not always that they've specifically wronged somebody. It's often that they've said something that people don't like or don't agree with, or they feel some kind of way about it, and then they feel wronged, and so then everybody jumps on the bandwagon of feeling wronged anyway. But there are times when, sometimes celebrities do something that actually was really hurtful to people, a group of people, or somebody in particular. But you can usually tell about those apologies because of how they're structured, right? The opening usually goes about how they've been doing a lot of reflecting. There's the part where they explain the context, or try to explain the context, which somehow is always this long, detailed thing, and it's almost always self-serving. Or maybe some of them might tear up, the moment, calls for one. Try to show some emotion, that somber face, and then it wraps up with something about growth moving forward, and like they've already scheduled the redemption arc before they even hit the record button. A lot of times none of that is even about the harm that they've potentially caused. It's about repair, specifically repairing how they're perceived, because that affects their income. It affects their brand deals. It affects the whole public identity. It's riding on people still liking them, right? So the apology comes less of a act of accountability and more of a strategic move to try to mitigate the backlash. And it makes sense from a self-preservation standpoint, right? Except that it makes the whole thing start to feel a little hollow. Because people can often smell the difference between somebody who's actually sorry, who is genuine, and or between somebody who's scared, and they're flailing, trying to stay afloat and stay relevant. But this is where it gets messy though, because the public isn't exactly innocent in this either. And this is a big problem a lot of times. When somebody does apologize, even when it is genuine, the crowd doesn't actually want to forgive them. They want the apology as a formality, like a checkbox. Like you did the thing, but the actual forgiveness never comes. This is a big problem with the public mob these days. So you've got somebody who's standing there fully exposed, right? Fully open, vulnerable, having said the thing that everybody demanded that they say, and the mob just keeps going at them anyway. That teaches everyone watching a very rough lesson, that apologizing publicly doesn't actually protect you. Sometimes it just gives people more material, more reasons to try to attack you for something. But I think the part that matters more than the celebrity stuff is that there are real moments, like true moments, when somebody messes up out of ignorance, for whatever reason, not malice, not being calculated and manipulative, or maybe they said something clumsy because they were uninformed, didn't know any better, or in the moment it's just whatever the reason, it came from making a mistake that's part of being human, and not being perfect, but not intended to be cruel or malicious, you know? So anyway, when that person actually owns it, they genuinely say, I didn't understand, I was wrong, I'm sorry. The crowd still doesn't let them back in. The mob is still completely unforgiving. Still treat them like they committed the worst possible offense on purpose. Still holds the door shut to them no matter how sincere the apology is. And that's where I think something is actually broken, not just in celebrity culture, but in how we as people act towards each other. How people process forgiveness in general. Because somebody genuinely didn't know, right? And they learn and they change. And then they say the right thing with their heart, the full heart open behind it. And then we still refuse to let them back in, still refuse to open up. We're actually not protecting anything anymore. We are punishing them for the crime of being human. And that is strange to demand from other people, since none of us has gone through life without making a mistake, or none of us have gone through any point in life without needing that same grace. I mean, Jesus said, how many times should like when one of his followers said, how many times should I forgive my brother? Jesus said 70 times 7. Means you need to keep forgiving. And he said, if you don't forgive other people's trespasses, how is God going to forgive you? It just comes back to the same foundation of you should love your neighbor as yourself, like love one another. I think a lot of people forget, they confuse holding someone accountable with refusing to let them move forward, and grow. They're not the same thing, Accountability means a person acknowledges what they did and they grow from it, right? But what some people want is more than just accountability. They want a permanent scarlet letter, a permanent ban on them. They want the apology, but they also want to keep the offense alive forever. It's like they hold on to it to collect it as evidence for later for something. And if we can't really figure out how to actually forgive people, with real forgiveness, then that kind of forgiveness that actually lets people come back changed and be received as changed. I think this is something pretty harsh about where we are headed as a species. Because the world has forgotten how to extend a grace to an honest mistake is a world that is slowly teaching itself not to love anyone at all. Not the kind of love that costs you something, not the kind of love that actually means anything. A world like that doesn't have a future. It just has a longer list of people waiting to be next, to be kicked off and ostracized. So I think the real question isn't why. It's not about just who's apologizing or why they're apologizing. It's whether or not we as people, if we've become people that are actually capable of receiving an apology when it's authentic. Because forgiveness was not supposed to be a rare thing. It's supposed to be part of our life as humans in a world full of sin and mistakes. It was supposed to be a thing that made us different from other species, that just discards anyone or anything that gets things wrong in any second. We're headed to a darker place, and things keep going this way. There's not going to be much of an us to be able to move forward. It's just my thoughts. I'm right about it, but, I'm right. Doesn't matter if I'm right or not. I'm just speaking facts.